I would like to thank you all for coming today, especially our honored guests, our veterans. Our sincere thanks to the veterans for serving our country. May we always remember to say thank you for all that you have sacrificed so that we can be free. Because of you, this country is great. It's the greatest country in the world. This day is for you, veterans.
Please rise and remain silent. What? Left. Left, right, left.
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now the Christian flag.
I pledge allegiance to the Christian flag and to the Savior for whose kingdom stands, one Savior, crucified, risen, and come again, with life and liberty to all who believe.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming? Whose bright stars and bright stars through the endless fight for the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting nearer, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave? O'er the land, o'er the land, o'er the land of the free, and the home of God
Order, arms. Permission to post colors. Colors. Post.
Just like any other day, in the land of the free, the sun was shining bright from sea to shining sea. Suddenly the sky grew dark, evil came on wings. Our faces echoed our hearts. Would freedom still ring? Make no mistake, freedom still rings in the home of the brave, in the land of the free. Towers may fall, but our hope still stands. It beats in our hearts, and it's held in our hands. So I'll say, can you see? Make no mistake, freedom still rings. just like any other day. In the home of the brave, fearless heroes gave their lives. They rushed to their graves. We watched the heroes die. Our eyes could not believe, yet heroes paid the price for freedom to reign. Make no mistake, freedom still reigns in the home of the brave, in the land of the free. Towers may fall, but our hope still stands. It beats in our hearts, and it's held in our hands. So I'll say, can you see? Make no mistake, freedom still reigns. The valley of sorrow, the shadow of death, though our eyes be filled with tears, though night be red and though evil arise, we will not bow to fear. Make no mistake, freedom still rings in the home of the brave, in the land of the free. Towers may fall, but our hope still stands. It beats in our hearts, and it's held in our hands. For our sake, can you sing? Make no mistake, freedom still reigns. Freedom still reigns. Oh, it reigns. Freedom still reigns. Freedom still
This table, set for one, symbolizing the frailty of one prisoner, alone against his aggressors. Remember, the tablecloth is white, symbolizing the purity of their intentions to respond to their country's call to arms. Remember, the single rose displayed in a vase reminds us of the families and loved ones of our comrades in arms who keeps the faith awaiting his return. Remember, the red ribbon tied so prominently to the vase is reminiscent of the red ribbon worn on the lapel and breast of those who bear witness to their undying determination to demand a proper accounting to our missing. Remember, a slice of lemon is on the bread plate to remind us of their bitter fate. Remember, there is salt upon the bread plate symbolic of the family's tears as they wait. Remember, the glass is inverted. They cannot toast with us tonight. Remember, all of you who served with them and called them comrades, who depended upon their might and aid and rallied upon them, for surely they have not forsaken you. Remember, never forget. We will never forget.
As you notice, our theme for the day is thanking our veterans. At the end of the first Veterans Day service we had here at Sunrise, I was on my way out after it was over, and I was on my way out to sanctuary to go and start serving refreshments to our veterans. An older gentleman stopped me, and I really didn't know what he was going to say to me. And to be honest with you, he was kind of rough around the edges, if you know what I mean. And he looked at me and he said, "Thank you." And it took me back a little bit. And I just looked back and I said, "Excuse me, today is about saying thank you to you. Today is about you." And he looked at me and he said, "No, you don't understand. Thank you for finally saying thank you." He was a veteran from the Vietnam War. He was just a kid over there fighting for us, for the future of our country. And no one said thank you. Our speaker today also served us in the Vietnam War in 1969. He has been a pastor since 1976. He's also a chaplain on the Polk County Sheriff's Department since 2003. So at this time, I would like to welcome to our stage one of our heroes, Pastor Bill Sullivan. Please make him feel welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I know when I was in school, the greatest time in school was to get out of school and come to something like this. And so I'm glad you're here. Thank you. That is awesome. I want to start off by saying one of the things that happens when a soldier dies and they fold the flag like this over the casket, and at the end of it, they fold that flag and they go to either the wife or the mother or the family. Usually it's a mother or a wife. And they will hand that flag to them and they will say, "Thank you from a grateful nation." Now, when I was in school, let me give you a little background. I was one of those ADDH kids, one of those attention deficit kids. And so I want to give the teachers here at this school and all of you that have been told you're attention deficit children that there is a great future for you, because attention deficit children make up the most important part of our society by being the leaders. You do not just exist. You are excited about existing. And I was excited about existing. The only problem was I was excited about existing in playing. And I really didn't understand anything about freedom. From the time I got in school, in first grade, there wasn't any kindergarten back when I started school, not for me. And I went right off to first grade, and all through school, I was socially promoted. I think the highest grades I ever made was a C, and that was usually in something easy. And I did make A's in phys ed, but I didn't make very good grades. I didn't apply myself. I didn't even try. And when I turned 18, back in 1968, there was the draft. And I still didn't know what it was to be free. I lived freedom. You live freedom. You live a great amount of freedom, and we don't understand it because it's free.
Right.
And since it's free, we take it for granted. And I really didn't understand it as a young man. But I knew the closer I got to 18, I was going to have to sign up for the draft. And back then, that was the Vietnam draft in 1968. They were drafting thousands of young men. As a matter of fact, if I'm not mistaken, we lost some 50,000 young men in the Vietnam War. So if you're thinking of the number there and the numbers that are being replaced and how often they were having to replace them, there were quite a few young drafted men like myself. And I was really a candidate for the draft. But the other problem was I had problems at home. You can imagine not doing good in school. I had problems with my parents. My dad was militaristically very strong in the home, and we would fight. And not literally fight, fist fight, but he was afraid that I was going to overpower him, and I was afraid he was going to overpower me, and we were fighting. And my mother was afraid that if I stayed home, I wasn't going to go to college. I didn't have any job prospects. As a matter of fact, one of the career counselors in high school called my mother in and told her, and back then this was not a good statement, today it is, but he told her, he said, "You better make him a plumber's helper because he'll never amount to anything." And she went home crying. And she didn't know what to do because there was really no job for me. I had no place to go. And so the day I turned 18, she met me at school and took me. I had a car, but she met me on my 18th birthday, took me to Clearwater, Florida, to the post office. And on one side was the sign up for the draft for the post office. And the other side was 4 or 5 rooms to enlist. And she said, "Don't worry about signing up." And I said, "But Mom, I'm supposed to sign up." She said, "Don't worry about that. Go in that building over there and sign up with one of those 4 people." And so I walked in, and my brother-in-law was in the Navy, and I didn't know anything about the Navy. I didn't know anything about the war, really. You know, 68, we were hearing about it, but war is so far away. When somebody tells you about death and dying and war, and you see it on TV, you can turn the channel, you can do something else, you don't really get it. It's gone, it's somewhere else. Thank God it is somewhere else. But my mother took me in there, and she told me to sign up, and my brother-in-law being in the Navy, I kind of thought it was cool to be in the Navy, float around, see the world. He'd gone to Pensacola and Hawaii. I thought, how bad is that? So I went in, and they signed me up in the high school nuclear field. And I couldn't even spell nuclear. Didn't even know what it was, but they promised me the moon. And I enlisted, and that was April when I turned 18. School got out in June, and 2 weeks after school, I was in boot camp. And I went to boot camp and went through all the boot camp stuff. And at the end of boot camp, my commander over at boot camp laughed. He usually stands up and he would read everybody's orders to where they're going. Oh, well, you're going to Pensacola, or you're going to Jacksonville, or you're going to this ship, or you're going there. And when he got to my orders, he laughed. And then he got to another friend of mine's orders, and he laughed then again. But he didn't announce where we were going. And at the end of all the announcing, we both held up our hands and said, where are we going? And he said, you're going to be a CB. And I said, what is a CB? And he said, you will find out. Well, I left the Navy boot camp, went to California, thought this was pretty cool, never been to California. Went to California, and they took all my Navy clothes, dumped them out, and gave me a whole bunch of Marine clothes. Right then, I knew there was something wrong with this high school nuclear field thing that I wasn't about to go into. And from that point on, I was directed towards Vietnam. In 1968, when I joined up, it was actually a few months later, I was already prepared and on the way to Vietnam. And I landed in Da Nang, Vietnam, got off the plane as an 18-year-old. They put you in what's called a cattle car. I don't know if they ever carried cattle in it, but it made you feel like you were cattle. And it was a big, like a horse trailer that they could put people in and carry them. And I was sitting on the back. And here I am, 18 years of age. I have been to Camp Lejeune. I've been to Escape and Evasion School in the snow, which didn't really help because there is no snow in Vietnam. And I was carrying a gun. And I really felt cool. You know, I've got a gun. And I'm sitting on the back of this cattle car, looking out the door, riding through Da Nang, Vietnam, smelling death, sickness, and disease. People are going to the bathroom on the side of the road. Homes are shacks with Coke cans spread open and nailed on to cover up the holes, and tin wherever they could find it. And kids were sitting dirty in mud puddles and just playing in the streets, and there was bombs going off and shooting. We were just driving through the village out to where our camp was. And I got a rude awakening that I'm no longer free. I'm now in a war zone. And as an 18-year-old, I really didn't get it. I have a saying, I sometimes think that they get 18 and 19-year-olds to go into combat because we aren't smart enough to know to say what. But in reality, they take 18 and 19-year-olds because we are committed. I was a volunteer. I was willing to go. Now, nobody wants to die. Not most people want to die. And most people really don't like war. War is not a happy place. It was a very sad place. As a matter of fact, before I went to Vietnam, I was engaged. 18 years old, got out of high school. The week before I went to Vietnam, my girlfriend and I got engaged. And when I was away in Vietnam, my girlfriend decided she wanted to be free. She liked her freedom. And she didn't want to be sitting at home. She wanted to be dating. She wanted to be going out. Now, I'm not dating in Vietnam. There's no dating. There's no real movie theaters. Now, they had movies for us, but you were sitting out there and you carried a gun and you had a flat jacket on, which is a thing to cover you in case you get shot. You had a helmet. And you get shot at, and they would lob bombs over into us or mortar into where we were watching movies, and we'd have to run and get out of the way. And so there really wasn't the freedom, but she wanted to be free. And so she didn't write me a letter, but she went and told my dad that she couldn't be engaged to me no more. And nobody told me I wasn't engaged for the whole Vietnam War, that I was over there. And I still thought I was. But she wanted her freedom, which I didn't have. And my life was such a blur. At 18 and 19 years of age, I really don't know much about it because you kind of turn off and you do just what you got to do. At 19 years of age, on April 27th, 1969, I was reported killed and missing in action. That kind of strikes me. My parents were about to get a letter. There had been an attack on a place called Camp Monahan. Camp Monahan was an ammo dump and very close to us. And as it blew up, it started bombs blowing up all over the area we were in. And we were in a war with the people, and they were attacking us at the same time. And so we were fighting. And I had been celebrating my birthday as much as you can celebrate your 19th birthday in Vietnam. And I was in a foxhole, sitting there in very little clothes because they didn't have time to put me on with my flak jacket, my helmet, my gun, thinking, I'm 19 years old and I'm in war. And you really don't understand freedom. And I really can't get it all across to you very well. You can hear people talk about it, but it's hard for you to understand when you realize that if you have a fight with a girlfriend today, a couple of girlfriends have a fight, you may make up in a couple of days. If a couple of boys fight over a girl here, you might get bruised and battered. You might make up in a couple of days because she'll leave you anyway. And if you get really mad at somebody and you get in a real fight and you get your nose bloody, well, you can wipe it off and you'll go home today. But law enforcement, as we saw at 9/11, firefighters, paramedics, military, our veterans, there's no time out. On April 19th, there was no time out. I couldn't say, wait a minute, it's my birthday. Stop. I still had to fight. I would still be shot at. I would still be blown up. I would still be killed or reported killed and missing in action. You really don't understand freedom until you realize it can be taken away. I have been out on many calls here in Polk County where we've arrested people. We went one night to a park. We had two kids parked off in the park. We pulled up behind them, and as we got to the edge of the car, I took one side, my partner took the other. They were in there smoking a little dope. When we got them out of the car and started talking to them, they were happy and excited. It was his birthday. And they were celebrating his birthday. Until we put them in handcuffs and put them in the police car, they really didn't realize that their freedom isn't free. And that day, on their birthday, they kept saying, but it's our birthday. There is no time out for freedom. We do not, our veterans, our military, there is no time out for freedom. War, one of the things I thought about, and when I was talking to Miss Gonzalez's father in the back, one of the things about war that we thought about many times was, I'm glad I can fight it in Vietnam or Iraq or Iran, not in the streets of Polk County. If you've noticed on TV lately, have you seen the devastation that took place in New York? Have you seen how the houses are destroyed and there's no electricity and people are cold and there's no food and people are bringing water? Well, back when we had the 4 hurricanes that went through Polk County, I was out working those hurricanes. and we were out bringing water, and we were trying to rescue people out of their homes, and there were homes that were leaking, and electricity was gone. Now, we're lucky in Florida. If you don't have any electricity, you might just sweat. But it's not cold. They're up there in New York. It's winter. They're getting cold. But what I want you to imagine is, how many of you have been without electricity for a night? Okay, was it fun? No. And everything in your refrigerator defrosts and gets bad. And it's miserable. There's no lights, there's no nothing. I want you to imagine a war zone where that is always what it is. Your house is bombed. It's falling apart. Your school is destroyed. There is no school. There is no electricity. You do not have fresh water to drink. I remember watching a mother in Vietnam trying to find food for her kids, climbing in our dumpster at our camp, climbing in this dumpster and throwing out and getting out the food that the military had thrown away to drag home to her kids because she didn't have it. I also remember a mother there who was stepping off a distance, and we caught her as she was walking very precisely and would stop, and she'd walk very precisely and stop. And what she was doing was she was measuring the distance from the edge of the gate to our chow hall where we ate our lunch and our supper, so that she could tell the Viet Cong how far it was so they could measure and set up to bomb our chow hall in the middle of the night. And they would. Now, over in Vietnam, I was very fortunate because I was what was called a lineman. A lineman, they climbed the telephone poles. And Vietnamese people, or the Viet Cong, were very superstitious. And they thought we were crazy. So it really worked out to my advantage to be a CB because they thought CBs were very crazy. And they really didn't want to kill a CB because if they did, they inherited that spirit. And so we were very lucky in some respects that they didn't want to kill us very bad, but they would, because I remember times I'd be about 40 feet up in the air, and we used to climb the pole with little spikes. And you climb up the pole, and you get up there, and you'd be doing your work. Now, you'd be up there, and, we have been trained to shoot our guns. We haven't been trained to be shot at. There's no way to teach you how to be shot at. And you're up the pole, and all of a sudden you hear this thing sound like a mad bee going by you. And then you hear another one. And pretty soon you realize somebody's shooting at me. And you come down off that pole in 3 steps. 1, 2, 3, you're back down the ground, you grab your gun, you're fighting for your life. As soon as you're done fighting for your life, you're back up that pole. Now I want you to imagine, we're not on the ground hiding in a hole somewhere. We're up there on top of that pole. We're like the target practice for the Viet Cong. And there was many times we were shot at. Many times we had to come off those poles. And I began to realize what freedom really was, because in some ways it was taken from us. There was fear of dying. Every night you went to bed with a gun. Every day you woke up with a loaded gun. Every day you went to lunch with a loaded gun. Every day you went to breakfast with a loaded gun. You never went any place without a loaded gun. When you had to go to the bathroom, you took your loaded gun. I heard a story about a young man. He was in Vietnam, and he said a roll of toilet paper saved his life. And the young man was asking, how did a roll of toilet paper save your life? He said, well, when I went in the outhouse, and they don't have regular bathrooms in Vietnam. There's outhouses. They're little wooden buildings with a hole cut on a piece of wood, and you go to the bathroom in there, and there's no privacy. And he went to the first outhouse, and there was no toilet paper. So he said, well, I'll go to the next one. He went to the second one. There was no toilet paper. So he went to the third one. There was a roll of toilet paper. Just as he got in there to do his business, the first one was blown up. And when that first one was blown up, he got on his knees and he said, Lord Jesus, come into my life. Because he realized if there had been toilet paper in that one, he would have been dead. You see, you don't know what it is, maybe. I don't know what you've gone through in your life, but you don't know what it is to think you will be dead tomorrow morning. You don't know what it is to be an 18 or 19-year-old thinking you will never see home. You don't know what it is to think that you volunteer freely, not to die, Hopefully not to die, but that you could die. Our law enforcement out here today, they didn't go to work to die today. They went to work to live. As a matter of fact, one of our sayings is, you got to go home tonight. No matter what else is going on out there today, you have to go home. But some of them haven't gone home. Some of them won't go home. There's somebody every day in America, there's some law enforcement or fireman or paramedic that dies. And we know there's people who die in the war zones. Nobody wants to die. I did not enlist with the idea, hey, I want to die. I jumped in front of a bullet for you. But I enlisted and I went in because I didn't want that war in your neighborhood. I didn't want that war in your house. I didn't want you getting up in the morning, having to walk through shattered remains of homes and bodies laying on the side of the road and be shot at and to go to school, or maybe not even to have a school. I went to war so you didn't have to go to war. Now, if that makes me a hero, it's an accidental hero. But you can become the great hero. What was just said a few moments ago about the man from Vietnam who told Miss Gonzalez, thank you. When I got home from Vietnam and I landed in the airport, I was spit on. The Vietnam era was a very tragic era. We did not win that war. We lost a lot of people. Nobody likes war. Nobody likes to see war, hear war. But the people who go over there and come back are not the enemy. Law enforcement is not the enemy. Military is not the enemy. But when I came home, I was spit on. I was called the baby killer. There was fights. My girlfriend didn't meet me at the airport because she was no longer my girlfriend, which I came home hoping to see my girlfriend. And my dad was having to try to explain to me that I was no longer engaged. That really didn't sit well, coming home after a year in a war zone. And I came home, and I'm not proud of this, but I came home an alcoholic. I had what was called post-traumatic stress syndrome. I didn't know it. I didn't know I was ADDH or whatever they call that. I didn't know it. Nobody ever labeled me those ways. But I came home with a lot of struggles, a lot of problems. And the whole time, God was trying to get my attention. You know, the greatest war that was ever fought was the war where Jesus Christ went to the cross freely. If you cannot understand anything else, understand that Jesus Christ went to the cross willingly and freely to give you your freedom. He died in your place. That cross was his cross. That girlfriend who left me was so that you wouldn't have to. That rejection that I felt when I came back from Vietnam was so you wouldn't have to. Those boys fighting in Afghanistan and Iran and Iraq are doing that so that you won't have to. Freedom isn't free. Somebody asked me why I was upset if we're leaving Iran and Iraq right now. When we left Vietnam, and the last troops that pulled out of Saigon, supposedly the Vietnamese people were supposed to take over and protect themselves. The day the last Marine Corps unit left Saigon, the Viet Cong came in, and all the effort that we did was destroyed in one day. And what that says is, all of those young men and women who paid the price of their life paid it for nothing. Because those people aren't free. But then I come back and realize, but you're free. It keeps you free. You see, we're not fighting war for oil. We're not fighting war for land because we never take over the land. We're fighting so that you have the right to go to school, laugh, play, date, have parties. We do those things over there so we don't have to do them here. Jesus Christ did the same thing so that you can have the freedom to serve him and to love him and to have that loving relationship. When it's all said and done, I remember that I had gotten back from Vietnam, had all the struggles, had all the difficulties. I was struck by lightning. I was out rolling up the window of my car working for the telephone company. And I had many people witnessing to me about God and about the Lord Jesus Christ, and I was all messed up. I was married, but I was all messed up, and my head wasn't there. I was out rolling the window up on the car, and the car was sitting underneath the pine tree, and lightning hit that pine tree, splashed down off of me, knocked me down on the ground. I jumped up, ran to the house, and said, "Yes, Lord, yes, Lord, yes, Lord, yes, Lord." I got saved that quick. And as fast as I got saved, I also got called into the ministry. I went to college. I was an A student in college. I've excelled. My mother, just a few years after that, got a letter as one of the most outstanding young men in America. She framed that letter and sent it to the counselor who said I would never amount to anything. You see, with Jesus Christ, He can turn all things around.
Amen.
And I know this isn't a preaching time, but I can't help that because that's what I've been doing for the last 40 years. But 44 years ago, I was proud to serve our country. And the young men and women who come back today are proud. They're hurting. They've left a lot of things. When you see a young man come back on the television, they didn't do this when I came back from Vietnam. They didn't do it when you came back from Korea either. Meet you at the airport with crowds of people with signs saying welcome home, and your wife or your girlfriend running out there to hug you, and everybody, crowds of people standing around and clapping and applauding. They didn't do that. When we came off the airport, as a matter of fact, we were told, do not wear military clothes when you go fly. Do not fly into an airport in your military clothes so that you're not attacked. So we would get off the plane and maybe mom and dad would be there. There wouldn't be any sign of welcome home. And it took almost 20 years. I was a Christian. I was saved. I was pastoring in North Dakota. And I went to a meeting in Minnesota where a man named Dave Reber was preaching. Dave Reber had gotten blown up. And the amazing thing about Dave Reber is he got blown up and he was burning and he was on fire. And when he came up out of the water, he said, "Lord, I still believe in you." And he preached. He watched as women would come into the burn unit of the hospital and put their rings on their husbands and walk out because they couldn't stand to look at them anymore. So when his wife came in to see him, he was surprised that she didn't say goodbye to him. And he told her, the funny thing was, he said, "Hey, honey, I'm not good looking for you anymore." And she said, "Oh, Davey, you were never good looking." And Dave Reber became a preacher, and he went around telling people with all his scars and everything, how that his scars didn't add up to anything compared to what Jesus Christ had suffered for us. And at the end of his meeting, he called up all the veterans. And I kind of nonchalantly went up there thinking, nothing's going to happen. And he called up the Korean, he called up the World War II at that time, and he called up others. And then he called up the Vietnam vet. And I'm standing up there, and he had all the people in that building stand up and come and shake our hands and say thank you. And I began to cry. Because after 20 years, that was the first time, including my family, that ever said thank you. Now, what's that mean to you? You can be the greatest hero. When you see a law enforcement officer on the street, don't make fun of them, call them Popo. You know, that law enforcement officer, we might arrest you today for something. But if somebody came to attack you and we're there, we'll take the bullet for you. We won't let you die. So when you see a police officer or a paramedic or a firefighter, walk up to them and say, thank you. When you see somebody that has a shirt on that says veteran, go up to them and say, thank you. I will tell you right now, there are many other veterans that come to me and say thank you because I wear some things to say better. But the most amazing thing is when somebody like you, a young person, a teenager, a young child, comes up, hugs me, and says, "Thank you. You're the hero. You see, you're the reason we do it. Our children, you're the reason that freedom is still fought in America to keep you free. And hopefully you will never know what real war is." Amen?
Amen.
Thank you, Pastor Bill. You gave us all a lot to think about. At this time, we would all like to pay tribute to our veterans. When you hear your song played from your branch of service, will you please stand up so we can thank you properly? Sorry about the confusion there. But at this time, if you are in the Navy, please stand up. If you're in the Navy, the Army, the Air Force, the Marines, if you are a veteran, please stand up at this time.
Coast Guard.
Sorry, Coast Guard. I hope I got everybody. Can we all give them all a round of applause?
Specialist Rodriguez.
Here's our man.
Airman Williams.
Eric, Sergeant Major.
Sergeant Bachman.
Here, Sergeant Major.
Sergeant Gripper. Sergeant Jonathan Gripper. Gunnery Sergeant Jonathan W. Gripper.
When you view the symbolic folding of the flag, each fold has a specific meaning. And as we fold the American flag today, we want to signify the symbolism of each fold. The first fold of our flag is a symbol of life. The second fold is a symbol of our belief in eternal life. The third fold is made in honor and remembrance of the veterans departing our ranks who gave a portion of their lives for the defense of our country to attain peace throughout the world. The fourth fold represents our weaker nature, for as American citizens trusting, it is to Him we turn in times of peace as well as in time of war for His divine guidance. The fifth fold is a tribute to our country. For the words of Stephen Decatur, our country, in dealing with other countries, may she always be right, but it is still our country, right or wrong. The sixth fold is for where our hearts lie. It is with our heart that we pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The seventh fold is a tribute to our armed forces, for it is through the armed forces that we protect our country and our flag against all her enemies, whether they be found within or without the boundaries of our republic. The eighth fold is a tribute to the one who entered into the valley of the shadow of death, that we might see the light of day, and to honor Mother, for whom it flies on Mother's Day. The ninth fold is a tribute to womanhood, for it has been through their faith, their love, loyalty, and devotion that the character of the men and women who have made this country great have been molded. The 10th fold is a tribute to the Father, for he too has given his sons and daughters for the defense of our country since they were first born. The 11th fold, in the eyes of a Hebrew citizen, represents the lower portion of the seal of King David and King Solomon, and glorifies in their eyes the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The 12th fold, in the eyes of a Christian citizen, represents an emblem of eternity and glorifies in their eyes God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. When the flag is completely folded, the stars are upmost, reminding us of our nation's motto, "In God we trust." After the flag is completely folded and tucked in, it takes on the appearance of a cocked hat, ever reminding us of the soldiers who served under General George Washington and the sailors and Marines who served under Captain John Paul Jones, who were followed by their comrades and shipmates in the armed forces of the United States of America, preserving for us the rights, privileges, and freedoms we enjoy today.
Forward march.
If tomorrow all the things were gone I'd worked for all my life, and I had to start again with just my children and my wife, I thank the Lord now to be living here today, 'cause the flag still stands for freedom, and they can't take that away. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the man who died, who gave that right to me. And I'll gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. From the lakes of Minnesota to the hills of Tennessee, across the plains of Texas, from sea to shining sea, from Detroit down to Houston, from New York to LA. Well, there's pride in every American heart, and it's time we stand and say that I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the man who died, who gave that right to me. And I'll gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA. And I'm proud to be an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the man who died, who gave that right to me. me, and I'll gladly stand up next to you and defend her still today. 'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless you.
Please rise for the return of the colors. Forward, march. Stand. Stand right there. Colors. Halt. Center. Face. Permission to retrieve colors. Pose.
You may be seated. I hope that this service has made some of you students stop and think about the importance of saying thank you to our veterans. These men and women that are here today, most of them don't even know who you are, but yet they put their lives online to go fight for you and your families. Freedom is not free. Someone had to pay the price. Some of our heroes paid the ultimate price. And their families will not be with their families on Thanksgiving or Christmas. Their families will have to celebrate the remaining holidays, birthdays, without their loved ones because they paid the ultimate price for you. Their mothers, their fathers, their brothers, their sisters, aunts, uncles, they will not be there this year for them because they lost their lives for everyone sitting in this building. I would like to thank all of our veterans for your willingness to put your lives on the line